Welcome everyone. Appreciate you coming to Engineer Hour. Today we're going to be talking with this esteemed panel about the Corps of Engineers support to Army installations and soldier quality of life projects. And you're going to find us focusing a lot on barracks. First question I'd like to ask the crowd though is, how many of you are outside the Corps family, not within USAs? Go ahead, raise them up there. Okay, all right. Well, thank you for coming in. I appreciate it very much. I want to take a moment to thank AUSA for giving us this opportunity. This is all about focusing on one of the Army's highest priorities, and that's its people. The important role the Corps of Engineers plays in this priority is critical, and we're helping continuously transform our installations so that the Army remains ready to deploy, fight, and win. This includes efforts to build modern, resilient, adaptive installations, and most importantly, provide safe and secure living and working environments for every member of the Army family. While some of you may be more familiar with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers than others, today I hope you leave here with a greater understanding, those outside the family, the capabilities we can and do bring to bear in support of our Army installations, and the Corps' role as a member of the enterprise and as a key contributor in achieving Army installation strategy and critical quality of life objectives. Where there may be opportunities to strengthen relationships and advance our collective approach to delivering modern, resilient, adaptive installations that provide a high quality of life for our soldiers, their families, and civilians. We've got a lot of great content to cover. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to let our panel members introduce themselves. We lost one. It was supposed to be a 4-member panel. Command Sergeant Major Galick, he headed to southeastern United States. He's somewhere in North Carolina right now taking care of our people that are out there responding to the hurricanes. And he was our ringer, so you guys got to come through. All right, so we'll start with Dr. Chris Thompson. Go ahead.
I'll go hot the other way.
There you go.
Testing. Here we go. Very good. Yeah, so I'm Chris Thompson, Chief of Military Engineering for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I work in the Construction Directorate. My role is helping different things. We work in the Standards and Criteria program, which used to be Facilities Criteria. We work on the Army Facility Standardization Committee, which produces the Army standards we're going to talk about today. And then we support the Centers of Expertise that uses for all the different technical features that are in a lot of things we do. And then we have communities of practice all across USA, some 12, maybe 14,000 different people that serve different technical specialties, fire protection, mechanical, electrical control systems, etc., all across the Corps of Engineers. So that's what I do.
All right, so I'm Alan Parks, and so I am the Acting Installation Readiness Division Chief for the Corps' headquarters. And so essentially the role that IRD provides, if you see Stacy Parada, so he heads up the Programs Integration Division, which handles a lot of military construction. Then in my division, we handle all sustainment restoration modernization. So he is a very neatly formatted project development and the bloody knuckles effort with SRM projects. But the IRD team has a number of pieces, a number of programs that we operate for the service. You'll hear about some of them. And so I am on a detail working from the HDDH G9, so I rotate back there in a couple months, but for right now, I'm probably certifiable.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Andy Nelson. I'm the Director of the Construction Engineering Research Laboratory, CIRL, which is one of the 7 laboratories in the Engineer R&D Center. So those are the labs that are part of the Corps of Engineers. My mission at CIRL and our team is really twofold. One of them is that we support installations. So that includes construction, it includes standards and criteria support to what Chris was talking about, and a lot of work in energy and planning. But then we also support the operational side, and so that includes operational energy, operational water, and all the engineered tasks that are supported on the battlefield in conjunction with our other laboratories across the
Okay, thank you all very much. We've got a number of topics, so I'm going to jump right in. We're focused primarily on the various ways the Corps is working hand in hand across the installation enterprise to help optimize the Army's generational investment in barracks and meet key installation strategy objectives. To frame this discussion, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Parks to walk us through a brief overview of the broad scope of missions the Corps is undertaking in support of Army's installations. So, Mr. Parks, over to you. And I've got the clock on you.
All right, sir, thank you. Excellent, here we go. So it is always, enlightening, dangerous, and scary, and proud at the same point where I have the chief staring at me from behind and sitting in front of me. And so, General Grant, for those who don't understand the Army Corps of Engineers, it's okay if you don't from coming outside looking in. The chief actually wears 3 hats. And so I'd argue the roles and responsibilities we provide as the Corps of Engineers are unique and one of a kind. And so as you look at the 3 hats that you see up there, the commander of USAs, the chief of engineers, and then the chief of branch. And so I'll start at the top one with the chief of engineers. And so essentially as the chief of engineers serves as the Army staff, he is the senior engineer for the Army. And so as the Army staff, as our staff lead, there's the office of the chief of engineers that works in the building. He is also the commanding general of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which then enters some of those nuances that we will bring to the table here with our roles and what we do. And so in that, one of the other hats, the chief of the branch for all of the 80,000 plus military soldiers in the branch. He provides that leadership and guidance to make sure that the Army is delivering engineers where we need them at the pointy tips of the spear. And we do have them at the pointy tips of the spear. And so, and then the third hat with that commanding general of USAs, so as a direct reporting unit to the chief, we provide for a lot of things. And those things include things such as the design and construction agent for military construction for the military departments, primarily Army and Air Force. We work in partnership with NAVFAC as the other DCA. So we've got that piece going for us. There's roughly 40,000 employees of the Corps of Engineers in the civilian ranks with the military at our districts and divisions. And so we provide leadership and guidance to those under the Corps of Engineers. And so projects around the world, we get thrown the billions of dollars of portfolio, but at the end of the day, it's about delivering projects on time and within budget. And so that's what we're here to deliver is excellence and quality. And so with that, I'm going to jump to the next slide. And so you'll see the one mission, one team, and the words military construction is a team sport. If anybody thinks the Corps of Engineers can go alone, that is a falsehood. We are in it with an entire team of teams. And so if you start up at the top, and because my print here is small, where you see Congress, where do we gain our authorities, the resourcing. So Congress delivers intent to the military departments and to include the Corps of Engineers, and so we execute. And this is one of those other areas where the chief, not just military programs, but civil works. So the ASA for civil works and what we do to support our nation's water infrastructure is, I'll say, unprecedented. And if you think we're not busy, that's what Command Sergeant Major Beam is right now, working to ensure that we're delivering on our commitment to the nation from a civil works perspective and the military installations. But they provide the appropriations, the oversight, and then when it comes down to the Department of Defense, so we work very closely within the military program side with the OSD, the DASD offices, who help prescribe guidance and policy to the military departments, and ultimately we become an execution agent for or part of the solution from a policy and resources perspective. And then down into the Venn diagram of the 3 levels. So where you see the Corps of Engineers with the red font, with the USAs, you see the functions that we provide, you see the local commands, and you see the headquarters Department of Army with the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Army, primarily the Installation, Housing, and Partnerships Office. But we work very closely with them as they prescribe policy and resourcing for the Army to provide for facility investment and the planning of military installations. And so within that Venn diagram, you'll see some areas called out, but the Corps is integrated into all of those functions and processes, forums, governance boards that fall within that. And it is that active collaboration that not just the headquarters of USAs, but the ERIC and Cyril Labs, tied with the ASA, IBNE, the Assistant Secretary Army for Installation, Energy, and Environment, where we're taking their strategic direction with the resources applied, and we're delivering capabilities as the Corps that the Army needs in the time and space they need it. And so through our roles with the DCA for NOCON, where we are brought in as those subject matter experts to execute R&M projects or energy initiatives, third-party finance contracts with energy, master planning for real property, installation energy. A lot of times we have a whole series of support elements that we provide in the Army: mission assurance, support for mission assurance, critical infrastructure. The list goes on. But we keep the Corps of Engineers firmly in place from the headquarters AUSA out through the divisions and districts and the centers to deliver the capabilities our Army needs. And that alignment is one of the things that's more profound when you start talking about investments in barracks. And so there's been a lot of attention within the Army for increased investments in barracks. We're well over $1 billion a year and growing for what we invest in barracks between Milcon, sustainment, R&M. And so the focus and the collaboration we bring on all facility investments for the Army is more prevalent in the barracks. It's not just a hot button. Since the Army had soldiers in the barracks, we've had problems in our barracks. But we are here to provide the right solutions for today to get them through for the next generation as they will continue to deal with improving the quality of life in our barracks for our soldiers. And with that, let's go to the next slide. And so this one's a little bit of an eye chart, but it gets back to some of the functions I alluded to earlier. I'm going to start in the very top. So what we as the Corps provide. And so we're more than just installations, but I want to bring some of this to light against what will be the Army installation strategy. So a couple years ago, the ASAI Union rolled out the AIS 1.0, as we're calling it, because now we're in 2.0 development. And so in that AIS, environmental played large with complete line of effort as one of the supporting pillars in that strategy. The Corps of Engineers is directly front and center in that with several players integrated across the Army's footprint. What you see up there is just a sampling of some of the functionality, the functions we provide in the Army. And so from the planning, you see the HTRW. So for those who don't understand that, that's hazardous, toxic, radiologic waste. In other words, those are the things that your mom and dad told you do not pick up and eat. And so the Corps is firmly embedded in providing that. If you hear the term MEC, munitions clearance, we as the Army, we like to blow things up, and we do it very well. But sometimes those things don't go boom, and that munition, the UXO that's on those ranges, needs to be remediated. And so we as the Corps are firmly in there. We have the formerly utilized defense sites remediation action program, FOOSRAP. That's a fun acronym. So from an environmental perspective, our environmental office is front and center in those roles. Going down to the second bottom, the efficient and resilient infrastructure, you will hear a lot about resilience. You'll hear a lot about carbon-free electricity and electrification, sustainability. As the Corps of Engineers, we are embedded with all of that and those efforts for the Army and arguably the other services. As we design sustainable facilities, you'll hear more about that from Dr. Thompson. Some of the pilots that we're running for the Army, you will hear more about those in times to come in some of the slides. And then where we have the energy resilience requirements. So many of the functions, even within IRD, we are tied into energy resilience efforts for the Army with a lot of partners. Come around to the planning and data-driven decisions, and you'll see the planner as a highlight there. So if you can think that every installation has had a real property master plan for decades. Was it digitized, indexed, searchable, and now that we know what we know about data and systems, the answer is it's going to be. And so Rick and Searle have been working with the planner module to develop that as a capability for us to digitize our real property master planning, to include installation climate resilience plans, installation energy water plans, and so it will all be indexed and searchable and beneficial for us to make decisions in the Army, and the Corps is at the forefront of that. Coming around to the mission assurance, when the nation absolutely needs the Army and OSD and the departments of defense and the military departments to do something, mission assurance are those assets that will deliver on the Army and the services committed to the nation to defend our homeland. And so mission assurance, we have multiple teams and multiple elements assigned to protect and support that. And then coming up above to the life cycle facility support. So when people think about, buying a home, you go buy a home, when you're done with it, you move on. But no kidding, who is there to draw up the blueprints for it? Who is there to build it, to deliver it on time to the customer who needed it? Who manages it over the life cycle? And then who disposes of it? And that could be through disposal or demolition. So that's a life cycle facility support. The core is integrated into every single one of those aspects. From the initial planning and design with installations, to the development and the design to deliver a capability or a facility that meets the needs of the customer, meaning the Army, through the real property asset management, working in partnership with G9. We devised the systems of record, the enterprise business systems, which house that data. We have engineers at districts who help with those garrisons to keep the data current and relevant. And then we also fill in to make sure that when we go to dispose, our real estate, environmental, all of those aspects are covered. The core is in place with those teammates at every step of the life cycle. And so that is important for barracks because barracks have a degradation rate that is different than other buildings. And so our soldiers need and they deserve the quality barracks to call home. And so the Army's commitment to increase the investments in those barracks and the Corps' role to develop the floor plans to make the barracks more viable for them is more important than ever. If Sergeant Major Garrett were here, he'd probably say that what we do here, we have to get it right. We live with decades of past decision making, and we are setting the tone for the future with what we're investing in our barracks as a generational investment. And with that, we'll get it right. So I'll turn it back over.
Thank you, Alan. You know, I'm going to pull the thread just a little bit on the life cycle facility support and go to Dr. Thompson. Chris, can you help us understand some of the reasoning for why the Army has facility standards, standard designs and criteria, and more specifically what the Corps' role is in shaping them, including those for barracks?
Yeah, sure can. There's a lot of reasons why we have these things, but I was trying to break it up in a couple different buckets. So the Army standards are really that overarching guidance for what we want each of those individual buildings to be. It's really the what are we going to build? The Army makes that decision. When we want those buildings, how many people do we want them? What are the criteria? What are the features they're going to have? How do we support the quality of life? Those are the things we want the Army standards to be. The criteria is really the safety piece of this. It's how do we make those things happen and make them safe? But I would say that is the how, right? So it really tells our engineers how we're going to implement these guidance documents, how we're going to implement the code, and how we're going to build that building to achieve those goals of setting the standard that the Army wants. And then the standard design, as you mentioned, is really just the core of engineers' way of being more efficient. So we take the standards that are in the Army standards, we take the criteria documents, and we start with a standard design that basically gives us a 10 to 20% foothold in the design process so that our engineers aren't starting from paper. They're starting with preliminary design and kind of sets the tone and makes some of those preliminary decisions so they don't have to go back and ask all the basic questions of what that building is supposed to be. They just start from that piece of paper, and it just makes our process more efficient. Those are the reasons we have those documents.
All right, thank you. Many of you may already know, but the Army has been on a journey over the past decade to evolve its barracks standard. And I'd go back to you, Chris. Can you provide some insights into the Army strategy and values that influence the Army's decision to update its standard in 2021, and then maybe go a little further and go ahead and discuss the 2024 standard as well?
Well, we've had a lot of conversations on the last couple of days. There'll be more coming because the Army is so concerned about this. Not just the Army, but everybody's concerned about this. Congress is concerned about it. Everybody's really interested in quality of life for the soldiers. To answer the 21 question, I think I have to go back to 2012. So the Army had a 2012 standard, which was 2 soldiers sharing a suite. They had a common kitchen, common bathroom, and they had individual bedrooms in that suite. That was the setup. What was thought at the time is that we were having a lot of issues with suicide at that time. That was one driver. But the biggest issue is that we felt that the soldiers weren't socializing enough. They weren't coming out of their shelves. They were able to go into their room, close the door, be quiet, and they weren't able to express themselves. They weren't able to talk to people, get these issues out on the table. So the thinking going into the 2021 standard was how do we increase socialization for these soldiers? How do we bring them out of the rooms? How do we get them talking to one another? How do we increase the socialization? At the same time, we were really concerned about the quality of life for these soldiers. We didn't want them to just be in this isolated, really cheap, apartment that they weren't proud of. We wanted them to be able to have a space that they were proud of, that they would enjoy, that they had good quality of life, they had good amenities and features. So a lot of that went into these decisions. But ultimately what happened General Daly at AUSA was really the driving force behind this, and Sergeant Major at the time, pushed this concept of the 2021 standard, which is 4 soldiers sharing a suite-style apartment with a common living room and then laundry in the room, they share a kitchen, and they share 2 bathrooms. But the idea there was that they could have a living room space that they could share and really, come out of their rooms, have a place to whatever they're going to do, play video games, play poker, whatever they're going to do. They could get out there and just have that kind of space to socialize and share. And then that would increase their ability to share what's on their mind and maybe get some of those problems that are, things that they're stressors getting out of their head, get an idea of so that they can help each other. So that was really the big driver for that. And then when we move forward to 2024, I think the biggest problem with 2021 is that the standard was just generally thought to be too expensive. Adding that extra real estate for all these soldiers to socialize and created it's dollars per square foot, it's $543 per square foot, whatever it is this year. That's a big problem for the Army because we're trying to do this with constrained budget. So we had to ask ourselves, okay, what is the way that we can deliver what we want, but do it as efficiently as possible? So we went back and had a lot of conversations about this. There were conversations about maybe having soldiers share a bedroom, right? So they'd be more collaborative, but maybe in a smaller footprint. There were a lot of questions like that. Maybe we move the laundry rooms down the hall so they all have to go to the common laundry rooms. They have to bump into each other and talk. A lot of things like that. They're trying to just increase the socialization and maybe reduce the cost at the same time. So the questions are really serious, and we were brought up at the first Army Barracks starting in December last year. And we discussed it at length. Never really came to an agreement, so we passed those ideas forward to the Secretary of the Army and said, okay, what do you think, right? So Christy Warmuth weighed in and gave us some guidance on that. So our new 2024 standard will retain the living room, we'll have the same living room we had before. We're moving the laundry rooms down the hall so that everyone has to collaborate more. We're going to keep 4 soldiers to a suite. We are going to keep individual bedrooms because we felt that sleep was really important, and their health was important, and that privacy was important to them. We're doing a few things. We're moving the gym out of the building, maybe we're moving down to the common gym at the installation. And we're also going to save costs, we're reducing the size of the bedrooms from 140 square feet down to 100 square feet. So dollars per square foot, that saves you some money on the front. And thinking if you have a common living room, then maybe you don't need as much bed space as they want. So all these decisions kind of went into this space, and we had these decisions finally made. And that's been approved by the Army Facility Standardization Committee, so the AMC, USA's G9, all the way down this. The final decision is having General Wilson's signature. It's to tee up for that final decision to be made. So that's kind of the legacy and how we help our organization.
All right, crystal clear to everyone. You may think that's the only thing Chris works on, but he actually is in the details on hundreds of things like that. Hey, Alan, I know I'm going off script, but you, having worked at IMCOM and then G9 over the last decade, is there perspective from those organizations that you could add to that?
So I would say that there are perspectives. Everyone might be just slightly different, but at the end of the day, there's some things they agree on. Get the standard right for the room. How many rooms are needed on installation, when CNAs are issued, those are all operational decisions. But they want the standards right for the room, they want it affordable. And so because in an era of static or declining budgets, there is no more money coming into this. And so what Dr. Thompson talked about, getting that cost, $548 a square foot, down, so if you can imagine, let's call it 80,000 barrack spaces. And that extra $548 a square foot meant that we do 5, 10 less barracks a year. And so we have barracks that are in need of restoration modernization or new barracks. And so make it affordable, make it right. And so I think overall that's where I'd say we have consensus, and I see some people in the audience who are part of these discussions. And so I'm gauging body language. But those are, I think, where we could agree. There are going to be differences of opinion, so back to that 2021 standard as an example. There's a lot of emphasis to make it more communal living, right? So being part of those discussions, there's goodness in having communal living, but then what's affordable? And so there was a lot of data that was used and analysis and studies for human psyche behavior from the prevention programs within the Army that helped influence what that standard was. And so we realized that, okay, goodness there, but it's now unaffordable. And so from a cost perspective, I think we've now settled on what looks like the right solution for our military construction programs. And then as we look at the restoration and modernization efforts, it's taking those decades of standards that have applied in those facilities and making them viable to meet the Secretary Warmo's minimum attributes, making sure we meet the congressionally directed what's called the habitability standards, which are reflected in the current Army standard that's up for draft signature. And so I think we're in a better place today. We will prioritize those dollars to deliver the investments that the Army needs. And at the Corps side, as we design and execute those projects, I think we're well postured to deliver them.
Thanks, Mr. Parks. I appreciate that. I want to get a little more into the cost, even though you both kind of just touched on it. As I've kind of engaged in the FIP process the last 2 years, barracks, child development centers are at the top of the priority, and everything else is lower, struggles for the funding. So it's very important that we can build barracks and be cost effective. What strategies is the Army undertaking to accomplish these policy objectives with our construction efforts in a cost effective manner? I'm going to go to Dr. Thompson first, and then Dr. Nelson, you'll go after him.
Thanks. There's a few here. I think the motto here would be like, deliver what you need and only what you need. I really want to go there. But that's really the biggest thing is you don't want to be totally lavish with everything we're building. And you don't want every individual commander to say, well, I got to have 400 square foot office. I got to have X number of facilities or entities, right? You don't want those kind of decisions being made all the time. So what we do with Army standard is we pare that thing down. It's very thin. It gives the soldiers just what they need and not a whole lot more. And we standardize that across the board so that it's a fix to come out and we know everybody can be satisfied with. And we have our center of standardization review that, everybody kind of weighs in on what they're writing on it. We make it within on purpose so that they get what they need, have a good quality of life, and meet the standards they have. But that's the tie that line so that that's what they get. So that's important. Another way we really watch costs is by doing looking at this from a life cycle cost perspective. So we're not only looking at it from what is the building save us in the construction building, but what does it save us long term? We make those balances. We look at energy performance and other things like longevity, until we need renovation, those kinds of things. And we try to make sure that the life cycle costs are really balanced for the Army. And that can have a negative effect. It can either drive sustainment costs up if you're trying to reduce investment costs, or it can drive investment costs up if you're trying to reduce sustainment costs. We try to achieve that balance on a long-term basis. It's a lot harder than it seems because you're dealing with data 40, 50 years down the road about assumptions about how much energy is going to cost 40 years from now. It's not an easy thing to predict. Maintenance costs, for example, having great maintenance costs in a bunch of different geographies 30 years from now. So that's a really important thing. We do run calculations on those kind of major decisions for that purpose. And then the last thing I think we do to save money is the standard designs that USAID puts in place. So we talked about this before, but if we can give ourselves something to start from, that avoids a lot of time and investment in making those decisions up front. They're already made. We've already got lead scorecards built. We've already got some basic specifications written for the different parameters in the building, and the engineers can start there and maybe say 40% of the design cost for a $40 million barracks can easily be a few $100,000 savings just from that standpoint. So it's a few things that we do, I think, save.
I think from a technology development perspective and new methods for construction and also new materials for construction. So we've had a lot of focus, and it's driven by that combination of a need to modernize facilities, deliver quality facilities on time and quickly. One of the challenges there that we've run up against, and everybody knows this from the past handful of years, but supply chain challenges and delivery have been impacted by construction are different, certainly not in the space of electric infrastructure as well, so power systems what we see extremely long system. So we have a lot of work in looking to understand the existing infrastructure that we have on installations and how that can support as Alan was talking about, planning for the future. So where are the spaces and places that we have capacity to grow and grow that can reduce the amount of upfront work that's required. So when we can plan that better and make decisions better and better inform a garrison or a decision maker on where is a facility going to go based on existing infrastructure, we can also speed the process of delivery. We also are looking at new and different types of materials to use. So that might be bio-based materials, so cross-laminated timber, structural timber materials, low carbon concretes, different types of steels are made with a higher recycled content. Chris was talking up front about we have standard designs, but then we also have our criteria and specifications. So at the end of the day, we still need these buildings to perform to a particular level. Oftentimes that performance can be in things that are driven by anti-terrorism, force protection drivers that we have applied in the DoD that maybe don't apply to the private sector in the same way because they aren't concerned about the same threats and the same protection for facilities. So my team at Searle and actually across Irving, we've got a pretty substantial amount of work in understanding the performance and dynamics associated with cross-laminated timber structures, mass timber structures. So these are laminated pieces of wood together that perform essentially like steel, but haven't been tested in a rigorous environment to understand how they perform against ballistic threats, how they perform against threats of progressive collapse. So if a lower level of the structure collapses or the remaining structure collapses. That is not a trivial process to work through. So building those new criteria and specifications, much of what is written in the Unified Facilities Criteria, which are joint documents, point to things from organizations like the American Concrete Institute or the American Society for the Testing of Materials or the American Society of Civil Engineering. And so to update those standards that our standards point to requires engagement not just from the USAIDs and DoD communities across all the services, but also from academia, from industry, from those decision-making bodies that are oftentimes international. So standard committees that we have 60 different stakeholders on them, and being able to push the science and technology in a rigorous way that we can defend the decisions and the processes that we make. And there's a lot of time lag associated with that, but by doing that, we're opening ourselves to having more decision space when it comes to how do we achieve that standard design, how do we deliver the facility. And that's really important because the more decision space that we have at the desk level for our desk level engineers who are working with 80 times on delivery, the more options that they have to be cost effective, to move quickly, to make alternative decisions that might be necessary to go from X to Y because this is available. So.
Yeah, I mean, just adding to that, I mean, this collaboration between research and development and engineering is so important, right? It's a step we often miss. And I'll just say, in terms of these UFCs, I'll tell you that they may not be right. Right? We put these UFCs based on our judgment of all these people, and everybody that works for me is like in their 50s, 60s, they've been developing engineering, technical specifications for 40 years. They're amazing people that are really, really good at their job, and they're a little risk averse, and they may not be necessarily comfortable with incorporating new technologies, right? So we have to find a way to challenge all those things that are in our guide specifications and make sure that we're getting after those and challenging them in the right way. I'm not saying take a bunch of risks that's unnecessary, but we need to kind of keep pushing at it and make sure we're doing the right things. And I think your team is so important in doing that because you're bringing up things, additive construction and sustainable concrete, things we put in buildings recently. And we're testing to see if they can work. If they can work, we want to keep going. If they can't work, then we can figure out how to make them work. Figure out what applications they are good for. And we're finding that. And I'll just point to additive construction because we've worked so much with that. I see friends are additive construction and craft here. But we've been trying to push the envelope with that in a lot of different places, and some of those have been very successful. Right? We put some in Camp Swift and Camp Avery, it was by and large successful. We've had some challenges in Fort Bliss because the sizing requirements aren't there. So we have to say, okay, what's next? What do we have to do to test it to make sure it can work? What conditions do we have to limit to make sure that it only is put in places where it should be? And we're just in the process of doing it. So we're constantly evaluating that. We're going to do, we're literally printing new facility components today, right now. So we can take them to Berkeley and test them next month to see if we can demonstrate performance in such a design category B that's happening as we're talking. So it's pretty amazing the kind of things that are going on all the time. But that came out of research at your lab, which is really cool. It's like collaboration is just absolutely essential. I think when we talk budgets, we have to talk budgets, right? We need to figure out how to make those things happen, make them more fluid. when we talk about other Army partners, we make sure that people are comfortable with doing pilots and demonstration across the Army that adopt these things in the process.
I was actually going to pull on that pilot string a little bit because, as Dr. Thompson talked about challenging the norms and the status quo for processes with UFCs and everything, how we acquire and build buildings is also not subject to status quo, right? We're doing multiple pilots in coordination with the Army and led by the Army that the Corps is involved with. As an example, one pilot project in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, we're using other transaction authority, which is typically an OTA contracting authority that is then used a lot in the RDP field because you're incrementally developing a widget. How do you incrementally develop a barracks? Right? But we're doing an OTA project with BIU, the Army's doing that with BIU. We have our Louisville district tied with Lake River Division, shoulder to shoulder, watching that OTA process. We've got an integrated design and construction effort doing as a pilot. We've got other sustainability pilots. We have a regional barracks SRM pilot that we as the Corps are working with G9, ISH, and OD on today with, so we can look at a multi-year look at whether it's more efficient for Army resources to deliver more rigor in our cost estimates to deliver barracks projects in the R&M world at a greater rate or at a better rate than what we've been doing in the past. So we're challenging the status quo, not just from UFCs and designs and RDP&E concepts. We've got other technology insertion programs. The G9 runs the installation technology transfer program that we as the Corps are part of, where we go assess that emergent technology. It's adopted for a pilot at an installation that the Army Land Holding Command is running. We provide the technical assessment of the capability and then publish that to Public Works and Corps engineer-wide so that technology can be more rapidly inserted in future projects of the same type. There's a lot of synergy between the Corps and the Land Holding Command with the Army.
I've lost control. Go ahead.
So I think the other half of the world that I live in the laboratories, and it supports the modernization priorities, and it's very warfighter driven, and it is very connected to PMs, PEOs, and the acquisition cycle. It's a very clearly defined process, right? So the comment, no comments of team sport. I think modernization of our construction processes is a team sport because there aren't, from a technology perspective in the laboratories, we can come up with good ideas all day, and people come to us with good ideas all day. But things like the Installation Technology Transition Program is intentionally designed to try to create some opportunity space, to bring the right stakeholders together, to do a pilot, to then get the right people who have to be on board to write the updates, and specifications, and do the long work that gets it done. And when we are starting, oftentimes, we're starting because of a problem or a high-level priority that has put focus towards it, which is quite different than how we start a POM build process for a new RDT&E program in the 6.2, 6.3 world, where that process is very heavily top-down driven for the so it looks different. But I think it's really important to have these stakeholders all together at the table and have the right format to be able to have the conversations, make the prioritizations, and then make the right investments so we can move forward.
Thank you all. And I was joking. That is exactly how I wanted this to go. You feed off of each other. Hey, we've got about 20 minutes left, and I do want to leave some time for questions. So I'm going to stay on the topic of cost. General Graham has kept, the phrase, and we hear it every day, and this is kind of what we live by in the Corps. We've got to safely deliver quality projects on time and within budget. And that budget piece is becoming more and more challenging. So I'm going to go to Alan first. Maybe put your HQDA hat back on because this kind of occurred when you were still in G9 before you came over for a few months. But the Undersecretary of the Army held a whiteboard session with key senior leaders across the enterprise and focusing on Army barracks. And go to the next slide. Can you share with us some of the root causes identified during these events? Sergeant Major Galick was there as well, and he was going to speak to this, that are driving high levels of cost and time growth, and speak to some of the ways the Corps and the Army are working together to effectively shape future delivery. And then Dr. Thompson, I'm going to come to you. You've done a lot of work on this as well. Go ahead, Alan.
All right, sir, thank you. Yeah, so the Chief Staff of the Army, barracks, we've got problems, whatever it causes, so Lieutenant Colonel Coleman, and then Chief for the Corps of Engineers held a whiteboard session. And I'm always fascinated by watching our general officers and senior executives hold whiteboard sessions. So I think whiteboards should be everywhere. But what resulted out of that was an assessment that, quite honestly, has transcended. That was then captured into some PowerPoint slides, and we usually use that as a point of reference today. But essentially, there were three processes that were identified as kind of the root cause of some of the various issues we face today. And whether that was the design process, we've heard a lot about, the estimation process, which you might not have heard a lot about, and then internal processes, especially above, when we don't get our cost estimates right up front, and we go to advertise the contract for award to a contract, and they come in with a bid that's sometimes 2 and 3 times what we had estimated the cost of the project to be, we have a decision to make as an Army. And so those costs to complete is a term commonly used in NOCON, but we had almost every project seemingly was a cost to complete, where we needed almost double the amount of Army's total operating authority funding to award everything. Unpalatable. And so how do we get this right? So somewhere in that internal process and that estimation process, we needed to improve the design. And so there was, so we now call it the Unders Memo, but the Undersecretary of the Army and the Secretary are very concerned that we've had projects coming into the military construction program that were not quite fleshed out. We had projects that were in the President's budget estimate submission that, quite frankly, didn't have a siting approval at the installation to site the project. We had projects that did not meet the 35% design criteria, which then helps us with the cost estimation to get the program amount right for the budget estimate. So the under-published policy memo that's applicable to all military construction projects and put several criteria in there. There has to be an economic analysis. We've got to do NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act requirements. You have to assess the project for the environmental aspects and considerations. You have to have area siting approval for where the building will go. And then you have to work the concept of 35% design phase. And what that really helps get us is a much more rigorous cost estimate, but it also does some other things, informs the economic assessment, so there's some benefits to that. So those 4 aspects of the Unders Memo were part of that. But there was also a need for legislative proposal changes. And so there were a number of legislative props, as you will hear them called, that were developed, some from the Corps, some from G9, some from IE&E. ASA will help to shepherd all those ledge props with OCLL through to fruition. And they started essentially in 25, 26, and 27. We're working in coordination with the Navy on certain legislative proposals for R&M funding or O&M funding for multi-year appropriation. So there's a lot of initiatives that came out of that one whiteboard session. Very informative, very intuitive, with a lot of plans or actions that we took immediate grasp of, whether that was inside the building, inside HGA, or within the Corps. And we're each pulling and rolling apart. The design efforts, that was one of those things. The design is too expensive rate, we modified that. The R&D association with additive manufacturing, the structural timbers, all of those things that we need to bring in from a policy perspective, or external are bringing to the table. So yeah, a lot of effort off that whiteboard session. And at the end of the day, it is very focused. Deliver better projects within the Army's barracks program on time and within budget. Give us predictability in the budget estimates that we push forward to the administration to make sure the projects are mature enough and can be cited and executed.
Okay, thanks. Dr. Thompson, if you want to comment a little bit more on cost, you can, but I really, before we start to wrap it up and get some questions, I'd like you to talk a little bit about the innovative approaches to our acquisition processes and their potential benefits in getting after the barracks renovation and modernization and other critical quality of life projects.
Yeah, sounds good. I think I'll comment a little bit about what you said at the beginning, right? So what you talked about is challenge of predicting what the budget will be 3 years out with only 35% of the information. Right? That's what's always so challenging for us. So we're trying to, and I feel for Gina and about all the installations making these choices. They're trying to project what the budget, what a barracks will cost before the pandemic happens, before the electrification policy is released, with no design, right? And that's so difficult for them, right? And then we come along, you say, do a little more information, do a little bit more testing, do a little bit of design, 35%, we give you a better estimate. It's not a perfect estimate. So we always have these challenges of, okay, how do we do our best to predict what that budget will be and hope that it all comes out in the wash. Congress could approve it, and we can deliver it, and the bids come in roughly about where we think they should come in. It's just a very, very challenging thing. I really appreciate this latest policy on getting to 35%, but at least make sure that we have the information we need to give an honest 35% assessment. But I think what you're asking, sir, is about how do we adapt these processes, and how do we leverage our pilots and our FDA authorities, how do we challenge the Milcon status quo and maybe do this a little bit better. I'll talk about a couple things that we've done. There's a couple things we're driven by the National Defense Authorization Act to do this. We looked at two pilot projects, both of them happen to be a joint-based list report for the Army. But we looked at doing sustainable concrete in one, so basically taking all the concrete that's in a building and replacing it with a sustainable version of that concrete, and that saves on carbon and helps us to address executive orders and driving toward net zero energy, net zero emissions. But that came right into your lab, and we'll actually go into this on a related lab, one of the Seven Sisters labs for at ERDIC. And it was a really great thing. We were able to project that we could do that with minimal cost to government. Just awarded that project, just kicked it off. And the award came under the program amount that we projected for that project. So it actually was a really strong thing. We were able to do that and predict the fact that we were going to get minimal cost. Unlike that, we went to a mass timber pilot and did the same thing. We are projecting that the mass timber will cost us significantly more than initial construction. We're going to proceed with that just to demonstrate that that's true or not true and improve it, and we'll find out what the bids come in. But the nice thing is that we're able to use the laboratories to predict what that outcome will be, and then when we go to award, we'll find out for sure what it will actually be. But at least we have something that's what that's going to be. We've adjusted the program according to the reaction project. But both of those two projects were triggered by the National Defense Authorization in 2022 and 2024. Likewise, actually, Air Force and Navy have similar projects they're required to do, and we're partnering with them through your labs to make sure that we're all on the same page and learning from each other. That we're not just the two Army projects, we're learning from the 6 Air Force and Navy projects. The other thing that we're doing is net zero infrastructure. So it's two important facts. One is we're building 3 net zero projects. You mentioned one at Campbell. There's another one that's a component rebuild shop. It's basically a missile maintenance facility at Letterkenny Army Depot in Pennsylvania. And then we're doing another one it's a barracks project at Fort Liberty. And we're looking at, not only are we doing those projects as net zero projects to get after some of the president's objectives, but we're also doing them using other transaction authority, and in the case of Fort Liberty, IDAC, Integrated Design and Construction. So we're leveraging these different contracting authorities to try to challenge the way that Milcon is done and do some things in advance that we maybe would have to wait until the next step in the process. We can kind of integrate it all, do it all at once, and then take that risk to hopefully get a better outcome on those projects. So the Fort Campbell one was just awarded to a vendor. And then our Letterkenny will be next year, we'll award that one, and the Liberty one will also be next year, we'll award that one. So we're moving forward with those projects, and they're going to be very interesting, really challenge the way that we do Milcon in construction. So I think those projects are really important. I think I mentioned the 3D printed infrastructure because it's something that we did. But the Army actually went ahead and said, okay, we're not going to use the Corps, we're going to go ahead and just put these things in place, use defense innovation, and go forward with it. One of the lessons that we learned as an Army was that you really need habitat specialists there supporting that effort, right? So the DoD a lot of talent to manage a technical project. It wasn't one of them in this case. So we were able to go forward, we're supporting them now. So we're supporting them with that Blitz project and the project at Fort Camp McGregor, and trying to help them get the technology right, make sure that the UFC are appropriate, they will come back and look at all those things. And we'll hopefully, one of my goals is that we'll be able to not only build those things in seismic design category A, but build them at B, C, D, and E, and use them into PACOM, because that's really where we need to find a good economic way to do construction. I think just leveraging all these processes is so critical to the way we go forward, especially in the budget constrained environment.
Okay, great. Thank you all. We're going to go ahead and go to the last slide. And when I found out last weekend that Sergeant Major Gaelic wasn't going to be on this, going to be able to be part of the panel, I called them because I wanted to know, hey, was there a message that you really were looking forward to getting out? And so this is what he told me. You know, what ultimately led to the whiteboard session. It was one of those cases where, I don't know if any of you have ever done it, but when construction and there's cost overruns, it's just the Corps' fault. It's the Corps of Engineers' fault. And so I think the chief was called up to the chief staff of the Army. So they had a great discussion, and they decided they wanted a whiteboard, but he remembers General Spellman saying, we need to improve. We need to deliver on our commitments. But it's not just us, okay? It is the partnership, the relationships are critical. In that Unders memo that Alan was talking about, there's 4 areas. We kind of own 2 of them, but MCOM, Garrisons, DPW own the other 2 before they turn them over to us. So the partnership among the Corps, headquarters, HQD 8G9, MCOM, our contracting partners, could be other contracting commands. Our relationships have to be solid. So as we look at our partnering playbook that we have in the Corps, the 3 C's, and that's collaboration, communication, and commitment. And I love those words because we've got to collaborate, we've got to communicate, and it can't just be when times get tough, because if you're not talking throughout the up through the planning and the funding and working together to set those conditions, if you're not talking until there's a problem, then you're not going to be able to figure it out. So that's kind of what I'd leave you with. We've talked a lot of technical aspects and cost, but the enterprise, the Army enterprise, and private industry have to come together as a team, because that matters very, very much in our ability to deliver quality projects on time and within budget. That said, I actually have 9 minutes left for questions, and I can also go to closing comments. And I saw General Graham taking notes, so he's either got a bunch of questions or I got a lot more work to do. The to-do list is going to get a lot longer. So any questions or comments out there? Paul. Oh, there's 2 Pauls. Paul Schaefer and Paul. We'll go Paul Owen first, then Paul Schaefer.
Okay, you guys got on here to ask a question. So, Speaker, congratulations on your new position. Good to see you here and doing this job. So, I was curious about, you say some involvement in the Army or the organizational industrial base. And, I think there's some capabilities within USACE, and just wondering, with the efforts that are going on to improve that. So, what's USACE goal in that particular program?
Don't use all 9 minutes, but that's yours, Alan.
So we can improve the relationship. No, so yes, the Corps does have some capabilities which absolutely help to expand and modify and modernize our organic industrial base. We've actually been integrated with them for some time in varying ways. So the OIB for those really quick, where we make things or refurbish things. And that includes mail plants, which tend to be government-owned contract operated, which are resourced and operated sometimes differently, and government operated portions of their life. And so in there, within the Corps, we've been instrumental in all the PEO or the PLJS organization for retrofit and modernization of the GO installations, where we have contractors operating facilities as well as delivering production capabilities. And then where we can be better, and active dialogue with AMC right now, the AMC YB war game that occurred last week, Mr. Prada down there with the team. So both MILCON and R&M programs. And so there's a number of modernization improvements to the OIB that are both MILCON and R&M. And so each has its own story, but each has a cast of players that obviously can collaborate to deliver success. And so I think where we need to really look at our relationship is where the OIVs need a capability with a technical mindset of the production requirements and modernization of the production within the facility. And that we as the Corps, that's not our core competence. And so can we do the nation's military medical complexes with a medical center of expertise? Can we create that capability if directed and resourced? The answer is yes. But today we rely on the expertise of the GOGO and GOCO personnel, employees within EMC to help provide that expertise to guide the development of the projects that are associated with the OIB modernization effort. And so always room for improvement. We look to expand the collaboration. And I know I've had active dialogue with a number of the players, Mr. Prada, as I said, was down there. So we know where we need to go. By getting there, it's a 15-year modernization effort. It will take time and apply intellectual resources.
Can I follow up just real quick and ask how much of this MILCON versus how much of it is environment? Is it like a percentage or how much?
Sure, the percentage is split of it. MILCON and R&M, so I'd argue MILCON today, the PAs I think doubled the amount of R&M, the identified R&M projects. And so from a magnitude or ratio perspective, so the next 5 years, I was looking at about $800 million in collective R&M, and Mr. Rudd, I believe you're tracking almost double that for MILCON. Now again, those are estimates based off of estimates by the installations, and now as we get into them and refining them with 35, getting them up to 35% design on the MILCON side or the advanced planning with the R&M side, we're seeing those costs grow. And this is where we need to get smarter and better to fit within the budget timeline that we're doing.
Thanks, Paul. I'll bet you Mr. Harada would love to talk to you more after this. All right, Paul.
Thank you, sir. Paul Schaefer, AUC WEG4. So first, thank you for everything that you're doing to look at different ways to do things, right? One of the things I didn't hear, though, and maybe it's happening, is our acquisition methods in terms of, I believe the Fort Liberty is we're moving to the design build, but have we considered something similar to one contract for multiple projects at one time to get those efficiencies, almost whether it be regional, et cetera?
So yes, so INAC is just one of the tools that we do either design build, technically, or design bid, that's contract and step in between, right? So there's that's a typical way to do it. Integrated design and construction is the way that we allow for the construction contractor to come in early and weigh in on the design process so that they're prepared to execute and that they're not surprised by anything that comes out and don't miss things that they're expecting. Right, so that's the one that we've used that in the past, and we had mixed results, honestly. Some not good results, and that made us a little shy of using it. What we're using it again here, we're going to go and push down a little on this one. OTA is one that we would not have done on our own, but it's another one that came our way through EIU and through some other pressures. With OTA, just another transaction authority that basically allows us to not do the things that are in the FAR, which a lot of people think are the reasons why multi-construction can be as hard as it can be. So that's a big deal. There are some large joint appropriations, huge appropriations that we have in the Tyndall rebuild that we're doing a huge amount of development, but also appropriating that gives us some leverage to be able to move funding around and do some larger contracts. So that's been helpful. But in a lot of ways, this can be a congressional issue. So if you wanted to build barracks all across the country, you better be able to have a congressman that's not going to appreciate you moving barracks out of their program into another person's state without their say-so, right? So that's usually the biggest reason why when we start moving around, a lot of contracts can't really be linked together. But we do a lot of IDIQs and things that are different types of contracts, design awards where they can design multiple things and at least get them teed off. The construction contract may be separate, but the design is big together.
Yeah, Paul, great question. And so this is actually where that regional SRM barracks pilot program, what that'll do, we're developing the MATOC, multi-award task order contract, so that essentially we have a bevy of regional and aligned MATOCs that we can get consistent results out of with our design and our construction. And so, again, a little bit of a challenge to the way we've done business in the past, as you know, where we've resourced either from the installation or from the parent command to do a barracks, and it's always treated as a one element. And so now we're doing multiples, and so we're trying to see if there's an efficiency in that effort.
So thanks for that. So last thing is just more a comment really. We look forward as we continue to progress and improve our partnership, and also for the other ways of acquisition, as I think all of you are now tracking, is the FBI model, as we're calling it, right? So we're excited about that aspect and everything that you just talked about. So we really look forward to shaping the way that we do military construction and RM as we move down the road. Thank you.
We're at the time limit, but I think we could talk about the FBI model for an hour, huh? 1 minute, Chris?
Yeah, quick minute.
Yeah, so, incorporating a big portion of the program is just something that time and progression level, and that's, I honestly, the Corps of Engineers, I don't think we care as long as Congress says, okay, we'll do it, right? I think it makes us better, faster than they do. The one thing I think we talk about with the FBI actually a lot, there are a lot of claims, and I say not just FBI, I say this a lot of times. People say, oh, I built the barracks, it was only $20 million, and I don't think it cost much. And then you're going to find out, well, that only included the construction contract and not the site conditions and the programming and the design and the construction and everything all the other things come out. All the other things come out from that project, right? So we find that a lot. We'll compare our barracks to like a former report at the University of Alabama and find that, well, they used a code from 10 years ago, and then they used, the site was already green space, and ours had utilities underneath, what have you. So it can be just a big challenge to compare project to project. But it's just something that we're always cognizant of. We want to make sure we're going to make those comparisons as big as we can, as best we can.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank the panel members and the audience. I think this may be the first engineer hour. We would have filled every seat. So I thank you all for coming out today. Chief, would you? All right, Chief, thanks for coming. And you all enjoy the rest of the conference, and thanks for your time. And the panel, we'll hang around if you want to have any further discussions on any specific topics. Thank you.